Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming this morning to our online joint gathering here in the aftermath of the Omicron epidemic, which is still serious enough that the boards of our three UU churches decided it would be prudent to hold services online instead of in our sanctuaries this morning. Of course, we miss seeing you all in person and being able to sing our own hymns, of course, but I'll try to make this online experience worthwhile. My name is Dan Tinen. I'm the co-chair with Jennifer of the Board of All Souls Church in Greenfield, and I preach every month at the Bernardston Unitarian Church, who is our host this morning, and also at First Parish in Northfield. If there's any bright side to the COVID-19 epidemic for us, it's that people from all over the country, even all over the world, can join this Zoom meeting from wherever they are. And also we get to draw on the resources of other churches to enhance this online experience. But the pandemic has ripped away some of the world's presuppositions about how the economy works. And I believe that there are important lessons in that, which I will share with you in my sermon later. Let's see here, I've got to close a bunch of windows. Stand by. Our opening hymn this morning is Hail the Glorious Golden City, number 140. And I gotta go through this, hold on. And I chose this hymn to continue my theme from last month of optimism and hope for the future, to chase away the dark visions that try to weigh us down. And this comes to us courtesy of the First Unitarian Society of Brooklyn, New York. And unfortunately, they don't have the lyrics, and the lyrics are a little bit hard to grasp. So I'm doing something special this time to have them side by side so you can read the lyrics. One of the cool things about this particular video is we get to see the interior of one of our sister churches in a grand old building in Brooklyn. So here we go. Yeah, that was something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
This morning, Unitarian Church, Universalist churches and fellowships all over the world are lighting a chalice to begin their services. And the chalice reading I've chosen this morning is new to everybody, so don't be worried about that. It's a reading by a former leader of the International Conference of Unitarian-Universalist Churches, Reverend Steve Dick. Let's see here. The light of the sun doesn't lift the shadows that have fallen on humanity the world over. We relight our chalice flame to reignite a spirit of radical optimism, knowing it takes us all living what matters to dispel those who would divide us. All manner of things will be well if we make them well. May we, our free religious communities, embody the right relationships our world so desperately needs. And this is the Declaration of Fellowship for the Bernardston Unitarian Church, who are our hosts this morning. We unite to affirm that love is the spirit of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our God. From all that dwell below the skies, let faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land by every tongue. Come on now. Oh, stop sharing. Well, now is the time that we have a period of joys and concerns to share amongst each other. If you come to this Zoom meeting this morning with a joy so great that it will uplift all our hearts by sharing it, now's the time to do that. By the same token, if you'd like to have the help of our church community to carry some concern or burden that you have, this is also the time to do that. Because we are online, we're going to try something a little bit different this morning. Well, not really different, but just an enhancement. Not many people realize that you can raise your hand electronically by clicking down in depends what software you're using. There's a reactions tool where the little smiley face is, and when you open it up, there's a raise hand, and if you raise your hand electronically, you'll go to the top of the joint screen, and please, after you're done, you press the lower hand button, and that'll go away. And don't forget to unmute your mic. If you want to do it temporarily, you can. On you're on a computer, you can hold the space bar. By the same token, if none of this works for you, I'll keep monitoring. And if you can just raise your physical hand, and I will put you in the queue myself. So let me stop the share. And I see Jennifer is with us. Hold on. Jennifer, go ahead.
I just wanted people to know that Ermery Jones's son, Neil, is really struggling. And if anybody wants to reach out to him or bring him something or send him a nice card or let him know that we're thinking of him, that would be wonderful.
That's Neil. And
Neil,
you've got
on Thayer Road. He's in the directory.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer.
An uplifting book just dropped off in his, at his porch or whatever would be anything. He'd appreciate anything, I'm sure.
I see Annette has raised her virtual hand.
Oh, is Sandra going to talk or me? No. Okay. I have two candles. One is for Robbie Ann. It was her birthday this week. So a candle of joy for Robbie. She's in Florida with two of her best friends celebrating. And we're going to join her to celebrate during the school vacation. So that's a joy, great joy. And then a candle of concern. I was in touch with a musician that I was hoping would play love songs for us next week because he plays a beautiful horn, Charlie Schneeweiss, but he has to go out to be with his sister in Minnesota who's ill. So I told him I'd light a candle for his sister and his journey, safe journey, Charlie, for his beautiful music.
Okay, switching to the gallery here so I can see anybody. I'd like to share a joy that we got a new kitten last week. She's 7 weeks old and she's running around and loves to chase little toys and climb up on her kitty bed. And we haven't had a pet for over 2 years now since our cat and dog passed away. So we're back in the pet ownership business. So light a candle of joy for new kittens. Okay. Oh, Andrew, yes. Could you unmute yourself?
Yeah, good morning, Andrew Baker from Shelburne Falls. I just wanted to share a joy that I've just completed the demolition on the second floor of our house. We're renovating the upstairs, and all kinds of interesting things have been falling out of the walls along with the plaster and a lot of dust. One of which I wanted to share with you, which is a small booklet-sized concert program from the Merchant's Hose Fire Company that was a dance in 1888. And this is about 30 years after our house was built that it somehow found its way into the walls. And it's a dance card, and there's a number of quadrilles and contras and other things. And the person on it got a few dances out of it. And I imagine they might have taken the train up to Brattleboro to participate in that dance in 1888. So I just communing with the people that have gone before me and appreciating the long line of people that have lived in my house.
Would you show it again, Andrew?
Oh, you want to see the dance card?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to go get it. You keep going with the joys and concerns.
Thank you.
Cool, very cool. Okay, Mr. Levitt has his hand up. And you have to unmute yourself. Oh, Mr. Levitt disappeared. Barry, go ahead.
It's actually me.
Oh, it's Sandra.
It's okay, we're both here. I have a joy. I started teaching bookbinding at the Hill Institute this week, and the first class went pretty well, so I'm excited. This is like my first round of trying to teach my craft. And I also have a concern for my poor students because this is my first time teaching my craft. So hopefully we use sharp knives and pointy objects, so hopefully there won't be a lot of bleeding. So that's my joy and my concern.
Okay, David, you're back.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I wanted to acknowledge that I believe it is Russ Percott's birthday. If not today, then I think this week. And I wanted to.
No, it's my
light a
half
candle.
birthday.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Your what birthday?
My half birthday.
I see. So you're 33 and a half now, are you, Russ?
Yeah, I was 33 and a third. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, next to you is Roy.
Thanks. Your comment about the persons who lived in your house a long time ago reminds me that I've just received information from the DNA test that I did a few weeks ago that indicates that my family, for almost for sure, is descended from the man Miles Morgan, who settled West Springfield in the 1600s. The interesting thing is that I'm apt to be able to discover a couple of other descendants of that family line that are living today, whom I've never heard of before in my life. And connecting with distant relatives is going to be fun. So I'm looking forward to that.
Next is Rob Peck.
Hi, I'd like to light a candle of concern for my friend Peter, who suffered a stroke and has been slowly and with incredible resolve regaining his capacity to move parts of his left side, and just so determined. And really the only good side of it is he's so loved. There's like a whole legion of people who are cheering him on and providing really important practical support. And I also want to light a candle of joy because I finally finished this book that Kirsten got me into, another fine mess Kirsten got me into. It's called Me and White Supremacy. Not a book I would have immediately picked up off the shelf, but one that's been a real education and something that I feel as a person of privilege, it's been really a revelation to see how embedded my complexion is in a whole really goes on, you all know about this, but it's just incredible, the layers of distortion, destruction, and prejudice that have come as a result of having so much racism be part of our system. So I'll leave it there, but I'm grateful to have read it and grateful to Kirsten for having brought it to my attention.
Okay, looking at the screen. If you're joining us on a telephone and want to share a joy or concern briefly, the way to unmute yourself is to press *6 on your handset. But I see no hands raised electronically, and Andrew has his thing for us now.
I don't know if you can see this or not. This is the dance card from the Merchants Hose Fire Company, and along with it, actually, this is the second thing, is Palmer's catalog. This is a lotion that was apparently good for about 1,000 different things, because there's a whole booklet describing all the things you can do with Palmer's lotion. So snake oil abounded in that period too.
Yeah, there's an Israeli philosopher says, how so many people are complaining about the age of falsehood, and he said, when was the age of truth? This is nothing new. Anyway, gallery. Let me look again for people who would like to share a joy or concern briefly. Nobody on the left screen. We have a lot of people here this morning, which is why it's good to have that electronic option. All right. Well, seeing none, I'd like us to let's light one more candle for those joys and concerns that each of us carry in our hearts unspoken through the week, and a candle for the world at large and all those who suffer. Now it's the time that we take up an offering to support the work of our three churches. I realized on my slide here, I made a little mistake. We can't pass the plate virtually, and we're getting our act together in terms of online donations, but we still have all our work of the church to support of the three churches. And I just realized I was supposed to get Northfield's address and I didn't. It wasn't in the chat, but Bernardston Unitarian is our sponsor this morning, and you can send contributions to Post Office Box 5 in Bernardston. All Souls, if you're a member of All Souls and want to send in an extra contribution, you see the Post Office Box up there. And First Parish, if you go to First Parish's Facebook page, they have directions. They actually have an electronic system. And of course, for those of you who are online, we're grateful for anything you have to offer. And thank you very much. Freely have we received of gifts that minister to our needs of body and spirit. Gladly we bring to our church and its wide concerns a portion of this bounty. Now is a time for prayer and meditation. And you know, I'm a big fan of the hymnal. I'm trying to become a better sight reader. As a contemporary musician, I was raised on chord charts and learning things off the record and things like that. So my sight reading skills compared to Lynn's or Keith's is very rudimentary. And I've gone through the hymnal a page every day. I try to play a different hymn, so I'm getting a little better. And I came across this and I thought, instead of as a hymn, it actually makes a very nice prayer. The words are by a Unitarian, Carl G. Seaberg. And it goes like this. Mystery who fills the universe from the atom to the stars, make firm our changeful hearts so we may do our part and bring joy to all the earth. Spirit who fills the universe with amazing mysteries, make glad our fragile souls so we can see life whole and bring hope to all on earth. Force that keeps the universe by the truths of living love, make strong that love in us so we can set it free and bring peace to all on earth. Amen. Oh, it looks like I skipped announcements. Annette, do you have any announcements for the Bernardston Church?
This week we'll be doing a chalice circle, which I hope people will contribute to on loving life. So that's our theme next week. And I'll send an email, describe more what it's about. If anybody wants to get on our email list, just go to our webpage, bernardstonunitarian.org, and send us a message. The other thing is we'll be joining the Kirtan.
That's next Sunday.
And Barry, I assume, will close out the month.
What time is the kirtan going to be, so I avoid the problem I inadvertently contributed to?
Well, Northfield is hosting that, so
it'll probably be 10 o'clock then.
Okay.
10 a.m. And I see Molly Chambers has raised her hand.
Yes, thanks, Dan. Yes, next week at noon, the Social Justice Committee is meeting virtually. All are welcome. Thank you, Dan.
Where's the link for that?
We can.
Zoom?
Yes, we can send it out to people. Yeah.
Okay. And I've got a Kirsten Levitt has put in the chat, there's a Valentine's Day Sweet Treats fundraiser for Stone Soup. And if you want to get some of the sweet treats, you have to RSVP on Wednesday. And that's stonesoupcafe.org. I'm sure that it's possible to record your thing there, or they will tell you how to do that. Looking again at the gallery. It's so nice to see so many people here today. Thank you very much. Oh, Sandra Boston, please.
Hi, for All Souls folks, next Sunday is a participatory service on the theme of watching for the dawn. How do you sustain yourself and build your faith and your trust in these challenging times? And people are invited to bring poetry, music, or any other kind of reflection to share.
Thank you. Okay, I think.
I have one more thing to add, Dan. Can I add it? It's a little teaser that we're going to have a slideshow which features Kelt Grant serving the haggis. It's a collection of photos from our Robert Burns night.
Okay. Actually, online, I think on the Franklin County UU channel, there is a previous version of one of our festivals of the Robert Burns with the music and everything else like that, when we could hold such things. And okay, so I think that's it for announcements, and I'd like to move on to our pre-sermon hymn. The core message of the service this morning is our economic interdependence. So let's listen to a hymn that celebrates that interdependence. It's number 134, Our World is One World, and it's sung in this YouTube version by a wonderful musician that we've heard before, who goes by the one name Leah. She's from Washington, and does a great version of this hymn, great and original version of this hymn.
Our world is one world. What touches one affects us all. The seas that wash us round about, the clouds that cover us, the rain that falls. Our world is one. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes with love or hate we make, a bridge or wall. Our world is one world. Its ways of wealth affect us all. The ways we spend, the ways we share, who are the rich and poor, who stand or fall. Our world is one world, just like a ship that bears us all, where fear and greed make many holes, but where our hearts can hear a different call. This is all of our world, all of our world. It's all of our world. Yes, this is all of our world. It's all of our world. It's all of our world. This is all of our
Well, thank you, Leah. That's available on YouTube. Just look for Leah, and she has many other wonderful pieces of music there. And we're grateful that artists like her are available to us. One of the most controversial novels of the 20th century paints a dystopian vision of a future America. The industrial base of the country has fallen into decay, and because the railroads haven't been maintained, derailments block the flow of crucial goods from mines and steel mills, and because the oil refineries have been sabotaged and can't be shipped, factories stop running and cities run low on electricity and go dark. Store shelves are empty and hungry people wander the streets. Schools are empty because there's no one to teach the classes, and things that used to work now don't work. And society begins to dissolve in conflicts between rival gangs. Is this a description of life during a pandemic? Could be, but no, this is the situation described in the science fiction philosophical novel Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. This book was released in 1957. Hold on. The empty shelves and empty streets aren't the result of some external cause like a pandemic, but by the titans of industry going on strike, withdrawing from the world in protest of government overregulation and taxation by the, quote, moochers and parasites of their creative work. In the book, the heads of the railroads, steel mills, copper mines, and the inventors, artists, and writers have all retreated to a secret valley called Galt's Gulch to protest a socialist communist government takeover of the world. And because these few titans have withdrawn their essential intelligence and creativity, the world has ground to a halt. Now, the title Atlas Shrugged refers to the mythical giant Atlas who holds the world on his shoulders. And to Ayn Rand, it is the people who rise to the top, the very few exceptional people who really make progress happen. A core concept of the novel is that without this 1%, civilization, the 1% who do the bulk of the creating, civilization would fall into barbarism and squalor. Well, it's important to place Ayn Rand and her books, The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, and a few others, We the Living, into context, both historically and in her biography. This is a picture of Ayn Rand, I thought would be interesting. Ayn Rand is the pen name of Elissa Rosenbaum, who was born in 1905 in St. Petersburg, Russia. In her young life, she experienced the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. Her parents were upper middle-class Jews who owned a pharmacy that was confiscated by the communist government, and the family came close to starvation. Rand herself was for a time prevented from receiving her university degree because of her bourgeois background. In 1926, she emigrated to the United States and was immediately struck by the difference between the mud huts of peasants in Russia and the skyscrapers of New York. Her parents were never allowed to leave the Soviet Union, and they were eventually killed during the siege of Stalingrad. She became a junior screenwriter in Hollywood and a naturalized United States citizen in 1931. She wrote her breakthrough book, The Fountainhead, and that was about an architect who rebelled against the stale conventions of his profession. And that character was modeled on Frank Lloyd Wright in many ways. And that came out in 1943 while the world was going through a Holocaust that was killing tens of millions of people. The struggle between Hitler and Stalin was particularly vicious. Both the communist and fascist regimes had made a practice of suppressing many of the most talented and intelligent people in their countries Stalin had purged much of the top ranks of the army and other military, which put them at a distinct disadvantage when the war started. And of course, we all know Hitler drove into exile or murdered as many Jews as he could, a select group of whom, like Einstein, wound up in America building the atom bomb. Now, the success of The Fountainhead and the movie version of it that starred Gary Cooper and Gary Cooper and Patricia Neal gave Rand financial security and prestige. And it took her the next 13 years to write her magnum opus, Atlas Shrugged. It's magnum because it's over 1,100 pages long. It's full of plot twists and characters and long philosophical speeches. Now, during those 13 years she was writing, Joseph Stalin's grip on a large part of Europe was solidified, and the USSR became even more brutal in its repression of non-communist thought. This is the era of the Gulag Archipelago, the series of Siberian labor camps in which Alexander Solzhenitsyn and other dissidents were imprisoned. The Cold War was getting colder. The Soviets had learned how to make the atom bomb, and American congressmen were on a witch hunt against communists and the American government. Ayn Rand appeared as a friendly witness before the House Un-American Activities Committee. Conditions in Eastern Europe were almost as dystopian as the America that is portrayed in Atlas Shrugged. Shortages of everything, a brutal police state that spied on people and got people to inform on each other. At the time, before 1961, I think, West and East Berlin weren't yet divided by a wall, but the differences between life in the West and life in the East were becoming more and more apparent as the West Germans began to rebuild from the devastation of the war, while the East had barely cleared the rubble away. And it bears mentioning that the hardware in many of their factories had been carted east to the Soviet Union. At this same time period, in the mid-50s, Chairman Mao was consolidating his grip on the People's Republic of China and was figuratively or literally decapitating the elites of old China in an attempt to make a society where everybody is equal in every respect. It didn't go well either for the elites or the peasants. Under misguided policies, millions of Chinese starved in famines, and ambitious programs like the Great Leap Forward only made things worse. Atlas Shrugged is a polemic decrying that kind of government. When an oppressive government takes away all independent thought and action, when it tries to enforce equality by removing all incentives or any extra rewards for hard work and creativity, there is a shortage of hard work and creativity. That's the problem that Ayn Rand experienced in her childhood and is trying to wake the reader up to. Well, critics at the time didn't give the book very good reviews, but it did sell millions of copies. Her books have sold about 30 million so far. It rose to number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. While the book is seen today as a linchpin of the libertarian and conservative movement, at the time, Rand wasn't appreciated by the conservatives because she was rigorously atheist and held some other views that people like William Buckley criticized. Atlas Shrugged was her last novel. She spent the rest of her life as more or less a philosopher and essayist. Her philosophy she called objectivism. As a philosopher, she wasn't taken very seriously by other philosophers, but she did attract a small devoted following who have promulgated her books and ideas through the decades since her death in 1980. And it bears mentioning in a survey of book readers in the early 90s, readers who were asked what book most influenced their lives, Atlas Shrugged came in at number 2 right after the Bible. And the Republican House leader, former leader, Paul Ryan, supposedly required his staff to read it, although he now says that's an urban legend. Despite her negative reputation among liberals, there are some things about Rand's philosophy that Unitarian Universalists can stand with. Her emphasis on reason and objective reality, the importance of unrestricted freedom of expression and thought, and the abhorrence of violent taking of other people's possessions at the point of a gun. Unfortunately, a key point of Atlas Shrugged is the idea that it's only by unleashing the power of the people at the top of the pyramid that progress can be made and societal decay avoided. You know, it's like this. Let the titans of industry act without any regulations and the world will become a better place. Let them amass as large a fortune as they can and they'll turn the earth into a paradise. And all governments are inherently engineered to take from the productive and give to the unproductive, the moochers, the second-handers, the parasites, or the takers, as Mitt Romney once said. Keep the weight of the world as light as possible on Atlas's shoulder, lest he shrug his shoulders and drop the world. Now, this core idea that it's primarily special people who need protection and nurturance, and that it's a sign of God's approval that rich people become rich, has been a major factor in American conservative thought since before the election of Ronald Reagan in 1980. This is where we get the idea that greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Altruism, a socialist welfare state, only helps the undeserving from waking up and reforming their lives, pulling themselves up by their bootstraps and getting to work like a good proletarian should. As the senator from West Virginia recently said, if we extend child tax credits, parents will just use it to buy drugs. And if we give paid family leave, they'll just go hunting during deer season. Oh my. Well, I ask you guys, in the last 2 years, did Atlas shrug? Is that the dystopia of empty shelves and things cause? No, Atlas tripped over his own egotism and short-sightedness. There were empty shelves at our meat counters, not because the people at the top went on strike, but because hundreds of people in meatpacking plants got sick and died because the titans of meatpacking didn't want to introduce COVID health and safety protocols. There were supply chain issues, not because a few creative people decided to go on strike, but because workers in factories and ports in China and truck drivers in the USA going cross country in big rigs were getting sick and dying. Hospital care, even today, is in crisis, not because a healthcare CEO decided to withdraw his wise leadership, but because thousands of nurses on the front lines died and many more quit jobs that risked their lives and had them face intolerable conditions, not to mention patients who fought against them, egged on by the titans of politics. The titans of corporations have engineered over the years a system that's very efficient, meaning that there was as little slack as possible to deal with things like pandemics. After all, extra ventilators are sitting in storage to interfere with the bottom line. And when it comes to economics, what about the 892,000 Americans who've died so far? And the University of Washington estimates that the number is well over 1 million. What about the millions of other Americans, someone said 12 million, who've been debilitated by long COVID? What about the 76 million Americans who got sick from COVID-19 and recovered, but still lost a week or two of productive work while they were home in bed or in quarantine? Were all these millions of people only moochers, parasites, and takers? There's a lot of denial of this, but we have lost over twice as many people in America as we lost during all of World War II. And to think that that doesn't affect the economy seems just a shallow idea. Now, some may counter, well, 75% of the people who died were over 65. And hidden in that idea is the idea that people over 65 aren't contributing to the economy anymore. And so therefore, they're not a cause of any of our economic problems. They were all people in nursing homes who were going to die anyway. Scrooge would say, let them die and decrease the surplus population. Thin the herd with herd immunity and lessen the load on the Social Security Trust Fund. Oh, really? Lots of people over 65 work because they have to. They might have just been greeters at Walmart, but they're not there now. You're not just missing a grandpa and grandma at family gatherings. When you lose that many people, no matter what their age, you lose a lot of productive capacity, and that has economic consequences. Now, I never hear this basic fact talked about as certain commentators complain about that huge $1,400 check that the government handed out to Americans. No, they're hawking the story that this gift of a few $1,000s and more in unemployment from the government has convinced millions of people that they don't need to work anymore. Last summer, even though most health workers were vaccinated, between 70 and 109 healthcare workers a month died from COVID. And a far greater number decided to quit their jobs or sign up with agencies that would pay them $20 an hour more than they were getting, so they would travel around the country. Well, to many commentators, it's terrible that wages are going up as we businesses compete for a smaller labor pool. Well, here's how much wages have gone up. Let me share a little gray, this isn't, I think it's important to see some things sometimes. This is a graph of how much wages have gone up over the last 10 years. And in 2020, wages rose a whopping 2.5%, and the last year they went up 4%. If you look at this graph, wages have kept pace with inflation, even while productivity keeps rising. Now, during this same period, here's how much the stock market went up. Whoops. This is a graph of the Standard & Poor's index, and it starts out back in February 11th of 2020 at 3,357, and it's just peaked right now it's at about 4,500. That's 38% increase, inflation, if you will, in stock prices. And by the way, this doesn't include the effects of dividends. This is just capital appreciation, and the average, if I recall, the average dividend of S&P companies is about 2%. Well, why is inflation in stock prices good? And housing prices going up is good. But inflation in wages, it requires an immediate contraction of the money supply and cuts to welfare to encourage people to go out and join the labor force at any price that Atlas feels is fair. And if you don't follow the rules that Atlas has set out for you, well, tough luck. It's living under a tarp by the freeway for you. If you don't take anything else from my sermon this morning, it would be the idea that the economic consequences of the COVID-19 epidemic demonstrate the true value of everyday working people in the world, and that we need to support the whole population, not tilt the table so that all the resources flow to the top. To do so is just as much a prescription for disaster as beheading the top 20%, the producers, the creators, the thinkers, as authoritarian regimes like Stalin's and Mao's were wont to do. No, there's a third way. As Martin Luther King said, we're bound up in an inextricable network of mutuality, or as the Unitarian-Universalist principles say, the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. We live in an interdependent economic web. The CEOs can't do anything without their employees, and there are people with special skills and education who are rightly paid more for their work. I don't begrudge Tom Brady for his skills as a quarterback, or Steve Jobs for his wisdom of understanding what products to build, or Bill Gates for the software I wrote this sermon on. And I don't think that they're entitled to infinite privileges that accrue through their descendants for all time, but we as a whole benefit from their extreme skills and intelligence. There's a difference between loving working people and just hating the rich. We need each other, and we need to find the right balance between the extremes of aristocracy on the one hand and enforced egalitarianism on the other. Experience shows us that establishing a floor or a safety net doesn't encourage people to fall into the safety net. In fact, it helps people take reasonable risks. You know, corporations were invented to allow individuals to take risks that would be too risky for them as an individual and limit their liability. And a safety net does the same thing for the working person. Ayn Rand was a self-made philosopher. She wasn't a trained economist or a psychologist. And it's easy to dismiss her, I suppose. But she had a point when she warned against treating people of talent and skill as the enemy of the people. Repression of elites, wherever those elites are based on intelligence, hard work, and skill, doesn't serve a society in the long run. But a sliding scale isn't oppression. Basing taxes on the ability to pay isn't theft. We have to look out for the whole of society, not take individual achievement as the be-all and end-all. Luck, the work of other people, and a context of a nurturing society into which we're born, these are all factors in success, not just an individual's personal gumption or initiative. Even if you're extremely skilled and wind up being in the 0.1%, do you really want to be forced to helicopter over the slums that surround your palace in order to go from place to place? I sure don't. Our religion decries fixed ideas, and we value reason, and we abhor tyranny of any kind. But our religion also calls out for justice. We need to be economically literate, not ideological. We need to stand up for fair play for everybody. And to give everybody an equal shot means making accommodations for historical inequities, the effects of racial and ethnic prejudice, the misallocation of resources, and the abuse of the environment. Giving people an equal shot, though, doesn't dictate an equal outcome. And to expect equal outcomes will lead to disappointment, frustration, and in the end, if you insist on it, chaos. That's the lesson of the wars fought against totalitarianism during the 20th century. The world is too complicated to fit into any ideological box of the left or right. As a thinking people, we should support economic policies that neither demonize the wealthy nor depreciate and devalue the poor. There will always be some levels of achievement and success that surpass others. We just think that that curve needs to be flattened out at its extremes of wealth and poverty. The way to make progress is to discard old ideas and learn the lessons of the world as we live in it. Like the pandemic we've gone through. That can help us change the world for the better. The world doesn't sit on the shoulders of a few special people. It isn't dependent on fictional supermen like Atlas, Howard Rourke, or John Galt, or in the real world, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. Each of us has our role to play, our own mission, our own skills and talents, our own growth potential, and we deserve to benefit fairly from that growth. That's the lesson of the past 2 years, and we ignore it at our peril. Well, It's been very cold here lately in Franklin County. Last night it was 2 degrees at my house, and freezing rain and sleet have made it hard to get around. We're actually lucky to have this Zoom option at times when we would have just canceled church for weather. Still, there's beauty to be found in the white landscape, and I thought it would be nice to send us out into the world with a hymn that celebrates the beauty of winter. This is sung to an old English melody called Forest Green. And the lyrics are by Unitarian Francis Whitmarsh Weil, and it's sung here by the virtual choir of the Edgewood United Church, a UCC congregation in East Lansing, Michigan, to whom we give our thanks. Oops, wrong one. Hold on. The world doesn't sit on the shoulders of a few special people. Neither is it a homogeneous mass of conformity, uniformity, and enforced equal outcomes. Each of you is unique, and each of you can grow. There's the person you are, the person you're becoming, and there's the society that is, and the society that one day may be. In the words of a hymn we heard earlier, though we may be oft in error, oft in anguish, let us be uplifted by the hope that the work we do will transfigure the world into a final reign of right. Go in peace. And thank you for your kind attention.
Dan, are you going to assign breakout rooms?
I am. Before we go to breakout rooms, though, I'm just curious. Hold up your hand if in high school or college you read Atlas Shrugged. Interesting. Yeah. How many people say they read it but only made it halfway through? No hands go up. It's interesting. Okay, let me talk amongst yourselves. It's sort of our social hour now. My apologies to people from Northfield who or All Souls who got the wrong start time today. we'll do better at making sure we get the unified start time for joint services in the future. I'm going to set up some rooms. Let's see here. Okay, I'm going to close all rooms.
Why don't we just standardize on 11:30?
There we go. I'm going to add a room here. Stand by here. And I'll stay here in the main room most of the time. Let's see here, Greenfield. Okay, all rooms are open. And to get into a breakout room on a computer, there's a little icon in your toolbar that says breakout rooms. Sometimes you can go to the participants window. And if not, let me know and I will assign you to the breakout room of your choice. And I'm going to say goodbye to our folks on YouTube. Thank you for your attention, and look at our websites.